This is Paulette Downey, and I am here with a message from the Lord. And so I am beginning the series that I said that God has asked me to speak on for the next 10 weeks, and that is the Ten Commandments. So I will be speaking on the first commandment today. Now, just before I go into speaking on the first commandment, there's something that I should have mentioned when I was talking about the Ten Commandments pre-existing and post. Ten Commandments, the timeline. There was something that I should have mentioned. I thought about it as an afterthought, so I'm going to say it now. When I was talking about, when the Mosaic Law, when it was put into place, and that not only the Ten Commandments were put into place, but also many other laws were put into place as well. I just want to, just bring it to the attention of you that many of the laws that exist today, many of the laws come from the Mosaic Law. So not, like the Ten Commandments and then all the other laws that God handed down to the Jewish nation when they were led into the wilderness after the Exodus out of Egypt. So many of those laws today, that's where they stem from. Even when we're talking about things like cleanliness and, things when you're dealing with mold and everything and like how to handle it. And when it comes to growing, like agriculture and everything, much of what has been instilled into our lives today, the whole setup actually comes from the Mosaic Law and from that time period when God handed down a whole bunch of rules, laws, regulations, ways in which to live, and things what to do and what not to do, all stems from that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention in case you were unaware of that, that yes, a lot of things, that we a lot of the laws that we live by today come from that. So anyway, now I am going to be speaking on the first commandment of the Ten Commandments. So I'm going to read it off. So it is in Exodus chapter 20, and it is number 2. This is the first of the Ten Commandments. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other God before me. So that is the first commandment. So what exactly does God mean when he says, have no other God before him, or, but him? That's basically what he's saying. Have no other God but him. So what does God mean? Like, what does the word God mean? So God is basically mighty and strong. So God is mighty and he is strong. So in our lives, that would mean that he is the source. He is the source of life. And he is the source of life. He is the source of life. He is the source of the creation of the world, of the universe, of all of heavens. So he is the source of everything. Out of him, everything flows. So God is the source of everything. So that is, and we get our strength and we get everything from God, who is strong and mighty, because he's strong and mighty. And there is no one else and nothing else that is stronger than him. And even if we were to come together as a unit of over 8 billion people and try to fight against God, it would be a match that we would lose dismally. We are no match for God, no matter what the numbers are that are being stacked up against God. We, in our entirety would dismally, like just in a blink of an eye, be proof. So because we are getting our strength, because he is mighty and strong, he is our source. So then, okay, because he is our source, and because we are to have no other God but him, what can come in the way of preventing us from making God our God? So God has given me 4 examples. There may be more. I'm sure there are. But he's given me 4 examples, and I want to stay on these examples because these examples really are like the crux of it. I don't want to expand on them. Maybe I can, but I don't feel it's necessary, especially, you know what, I won't even say that. I'll just kind of go into this and I'll talk about what just came to my mind later. But what could go in the way of us not making God the central, or not making God our God, or, you know, having no other God but him? And the first thing that can cause us to have another God over God is to make ourselves God. So making ourselves God will, in a sense, interfere with us placing God first. And, you know, we as Christians, we say that we place God first. But that's not always the case. And I know it's not always the case with me. I know it's not always the case with me. And I'm sure most Christians would agree that even though, you know, like God is central in their lives, and, you know, like for the most part, you know, we you know, that many of us are living, you know, in his will, there are times that, you know, we're not making him central. And this is understandable because we have been given the responsibility of caring for ourselves, of living for ourselves, of living a certain life for ourselves. God has entrusted us with the people who we are to, you know, live accordingly. So, you know, how, you know, we have choice in how we dress, we have choice in how we eat, we have choice in where we go and what we do. So naturally, we want to be the God of our own lives. Naturally, this is just, you know, it's just innate. You know, we are us. So we want to go where we want to go. We want to do what we want to do. We want to say, but we want that kind of control. But by making ourselves our God, by being in control, because that's basically what it is. It's a matter of controlling our lives. Now, this one is a big one. Look, you know what? I could sit on here right now and I could talk about this first one all on its own. I'm going to really try and cut it down. But this first one about us as individuals making ourselves God over God. Look, I could go on. I could really go on, but I'm really going to really try and just cut this one short here as best I can. But by making ourselves God over our life. And so this, okay, so I've divided this in a few ways. The first one, like I said, is control. There is control, and so I think maybe I'll stick to that one first, and then I will go into the next one, which I've split. So control is the first one. Control over our lives and how we live our lives and the decisions we make and the things, you know, the people who we allow in our lives, the jobs that we choose and everything like that. So the whole thing about controlling our lives, because that's a sense, and not wanting to yield that control to God, not wanting to die to self. So what that produces is us, so we're living the life that we feel we should be living, and we are doing the things that we think we should be doing. But we are not going to God and asking Him what it is we think, what it is He wants us to be doing. We're not going and to God and inquiring of Him about how we should be living, about the friends that we should be choosing, about the jobs that we should be choosing, about how we should be eating. We are not relying on God. There is a self-reliance that has taken place when we make ourselves God. So when we make ourselves God, that's basically what we're doing. That's essentially what we're doing. We are relying on our own strength. So like I said, God is mighty and strong, meaning of God. So we are now taking the strength away from God and we are placing it on ourselves. And we are saying that we don't need God. We're independent of God. And that we can make our own decisions and we can choose, what to do and what to not to do. Now, I don't know about you, but I know for myself, by doing that, it has just been, for me, it has spelled disaster. It has been complete disaster by doing that. It seems at the time that you are going in the right direction. At the time, it seemed that I was making the right choices or that I was going in the right direction. But in the end, it just leads to a dead end. And so, because I don't know, I can't foresee the future. I don't know what is coming up. I don't know what is waiting for me. But God does. And so we tend to think, because I don't know, we just tend to think that we know it all. I know for myself that with my life and with me, I tend to think that the choices that I make are the right choices. And I really just believe that those are the right choices. Now, because I've given my life to God, because I've surrendered my life to God, now because I die to self and I continue to die to self on a daily basis, it's not easy, but I continue to die to self on a daily basis, God has shown me, even, like when I die to self on a daily basis, but sometimes even on a daily basis, I make choices or, decisions or whatnot, things that I think, like I'm making them on my own, and they prove to be wrong. Or sometimes it's not even a matter of making the choices, but it's a matter of thinking a certain way. So sometimes it's not even choices. It's just a matter of thinking a certain way and thinking that my way is the right way and really, really being firm and thinking that the way that I am thinking is the right way. And, like I'll have conversations with God, and God has really showed me that He has really showed me that the way that I've been thinking was completely wrong. So I was thinking completely, because by thinking wrong, then it's leading you in a certain direction. So God has really opened my eyes to seeing just how wrong I am in my thinking. He has, and it's, like this year, He's really shown me, like just even with thinking certain things and not necessarily acting on them. Because I'm thinking them, but I am consulting Him. And even though I'm thinking to act on it, I will not act on it because I haven't, gotten, okay, what, He hasn't responded. But what ends up happening is because I am, how can I put it, just standing in faith and trusting Him, He allows things to evolve so that He's showing me that my thinking was completely off. And that had I gone in that direction, it would have been completely wrong. So God has been showing me that a lot of my thinking is idiotic. It's completely idiotic. But because I am trusting Him, regardless of what I'm thinking, because I don't know. Like, all I know is I'm trusting. There are times when you don't know, what, how to react, what to say, what to do. So you just stand still and you trust God. and God will, reveal things to you, and he will, he reveals things to me, and he shows me, and he allows me to see, and it's like, oh my goodness, God, now I see, now I understand, but this is now because I have placed my faith and my trust in him, and I am not relying on my own strength and what I think and what I think I know. I'm relying completely and totally on him. I'm going to have to, excuse me for one brief second here, a few seconds here, just, yeah, excuse me. Sorry about that. So yes, so I've learned just by, by just trusting in God, and just, like, even if, like, I'm saying, God, not making sense here. This isn't making sense. And, and I'm thinking that my way is the way. And God would show me that, he'd just show me that your way is so not the way. But that is because I have relinquished control for my life and given it completely to him. So even though I am thinking one way, because of my walk with him, I've learned how to, in spite of what I am thinking, trust him and allow him to govern the things that I do, the things that I don't do. Excuse me. Oh, I don't know why this is happening. So anyway, so yes, so by me releasing control for myself and trusting him, and like, I'm not saying that, like, if you want a chicken or, like a fried chicken or something, you can't have it. I'm not talking about things like that. Or if you, you go to, shopping or whatnot, and you see a dress that you can't buy it. I'm not talking about, the choices that you make, and the clothing you wear, or the hair color that you choose to dye your hair, or the makeup that you choose. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about decisions that can impact your life, and impact, the trajectory of your life. So this is what I'm talking about here. And, like, just, being open and just allowing God, giving God the control over your life, as opposed to making those types of decisions, always consulting with God, always coming to God, always relying on him as the source and not yourself as the source. So when you die to self, it doesn't necessarily feel good, depending on depending on the situation you're in. It's sometimes when you're dying to self, you're dying to pride, which I'm actually going to get into that one in a second. But you're dying to pride, you're dying to your own kind of like selfish needs, and you're dying to so much because you want to do it one way, and you may not like a certain situation, or you may not like like a certain, it could be like a certain job, it could be anything. But if God wants you to be there, if God wants you to be, like, if you go to a church and the people who you find at the church you don't mesh with, but if God wants you there, then you are to stay at that church regardless of how you're feeling. And so decisions like that, because wherever you go, whoever you meet, like whatever job you're in, whatever, it's not going to be perfect. Like, no matter what we do, no matter where you move, no matter what it's not going to be perfect. But if God wants you there, it is the perfect place to be. If God wants you doing it, it is the perfect thing to do. Maybe even if there is no even if it doesn't feel perfect, even if there's not perfection in what you're doing, it is perfect. It is in the perfect will of God. It is where he wants you to be. It's where you need to be. for your future and the alignment in your life with God. And there is such growth in that. But if we are taking control of our own lives and we are being God, like that, and control, also with control, so you have that, but there's also the fact with the whole manipulation. So when you are your own God, depending on the personality, depending on the person, there comes manipulation. So if you are your own God, you want an outcome in your own way. You want things done in your own way. And depending on the degree of the control, it can become very manipulating to the point of trying to manipulate outcomes, trying to manipulate people and how they think and what they do. So you're trying to manipulate outcomes and decisions and how people think and how people do. You can control becoming, so when you're controlling, I mean, like I was just talking about myself, and there's one side. I'm not saying everybody who wants control of their lives are manipulating. No, I'm not saying that. But there are people who, because they are very controlling, are very manipulative because of their control, which all, and this all goes into self-esteem. There's so much. That's why I said this is a topic that I can so go into, because when you take God away from the equation, when you have no longer made God your God, then you're going to make something else your God. So when people say things like, I just go with the flow. I just live my life. I don't follow anyone. I'm an individualist. No, you're not. No, you're not. So clearly you're not in line with God, but you are in line with something. You are following something. You are following. I don't care if you may not be an atheist. You may not, atheist or agnostic. I mean, it has to be something. But you are following something. You are not your own individual. You are following something. You are following someone, but you are not following yourself. Because how do you follow yourself? Like, none of us come into this world knowing everything. None of us come into this world knowing anything. So how can you follow yourself? Like, how are you just, there has to be philosophies. There has to be things that you are doing that you have learned from someone else. So none of us are following ourselves. We're all following something or someone. So there is control that we have relinquished somewhere or with something or someone. So by making ourselves our God, by being our God, it opens the door to us making bad choices in life. We see things like we make bad choices in life because we think this is the direction that we should be going in, or that is the direction we should be going in. And we think, and I'm going to actually go into this one, I'm bringing pride up because pride is the next thing with being our own God. And I'm going to and this is where I'm kind of opening the door right now. When we are our own gods, when we, like that control, that self-control, it opens the door to pride. And so there are two spectrums to pride. There's two spectrums to pride. I know I talked about this briefly, where you have This is something I learned when I was in college and I was studying. I studied a little bit of psychology. So you have the superego, and then the superego, which is someone who just thinks they're grand and they're perfect and they're wonderful and they have an overinflated ego. And then you have someone who has the id, which is someone who is really, really insecure. And so this is basically pride split. I mean, you have the superego, you have the ego, and then you have id. But I'm just really going to go into the superego, pride basically, but the spectrums, the extreme spectrums here. So you have the superego, or pride, but the inflated pride. Now, with the inflated pride, of course, we know, if you don't, there is Satan, who was the most beautiful angel out of all the angels, and who was like the director, what you would call the director of music. Like he was the, of music and of worship to God. And one day he just looked at himself in the mirror, or whatever kind of reflection he was looking at, and he just said, I am the most beautiful creation of all creation. And that was the sin that entered into him. And from then, because when he would when he would speak to the other angels, they would look at him in awe. They would look at him and, oh my gosh, like in awe, like if they were looking at God. And the reason why they would look at him in awe, like they were looking at God, is because they were looking at the glory of God, because Satan was always in the presence of God, worshiping him. So because of that, because there's a light, I want the light to come back on here. And so I'm gonna turn the light on. I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna turn the light on because I want the light on. I want it on. I'll be right back. Oh, see you there. Okay. So yes. So because he was in the presence of God, that's where his light came from. His light came from being in the presence of God, but he thought it was something that he manufactured, not realizing, forgetting that God created him. So God created Satan as God has created all of us. So the fact that he was so beautiful, and the fact that he worshiped God, and he was like the director, of worship and everything like that, and that he was honored to constantly be in the presence of God, whereas the other angels didn't have that kind of access to God that he had, he let that all go to his head. And because he let that all go to his head, he then thought he was better than the one who created him. And so because he thought he was better than the one who created him, he then conjured up a quarter of the angels to go against God, so that he could then dethrone God and sit on the throne of God. And we kind of all know how that worked out. He was cast out of heaven, basically down to earth. And so he's in another dimension in this world. He's in the second level of heaven. This is the third level of heaven. So he's in the second level of heaven. But yes, he's in the second level. We're in the third level, God's first level. And so he was cast out, and right now there's a place awaiting for him and the 1/3 of the angels who went up against God as a result of that. Because he thought that his beauty was manufactured by himself. He forgot. And the glory that he had, he thought it was all him. And it wasn't him. The glory came from God. His beauty came from God. Everything came from God. Everything came from God. But he thought it came from him. And that is that spectrum of self. of thinking that you are God. That is us thinking we are God. You have many people today who think they are the most beautiful creations that has walked the face of the earth. You have people who think they are smarter than God. You have people who think they are more creative than everyone else. You have people walking around who think they are the best of the best. And as a result of thinking that they're the best of the best, they look their nose down on other people because they think, I'm better than you. I'm more beautiful than you. I'm smarter than you. I'm richer than you. I'm more sane than you. I'm the ultimate. I'm rich, you're poor. Because I'm rich, I'm better than you. Because you're poor, you're nothing. So you have all of this pride which is going on, and this is not of God. And this is not, so you have now not made God the center, because if you're making God the center, if God is your God, then your source will flow. And so all of these kind of attributes of self wouldn't be there, because he is, you've made him God, and making him God is your source. And so also when I talk about pride, but I also talk about like when we make God our God, like making God our God is like we are depending on him, we are relying on him. We are not relying on our own strength. I should have included that before I talked about pride. But when we make God our God, we are relying on his strength to help us. And there are, like I said, there are three other things that I'm going to be talking about. The pride and, the whole self-control is the first, because this is basically tied to self. But when we are relying on self, we are relying on our resources and our knowledge and what we know. And our resources and our knowledge is limited. It's limited. We don't have the resources or knowledge to know what we should do, what we should not be doing. So when we are relying on self, and I'm sorry I digress, but I feel I need to talk about this before I go back into pride. When we make God our God, we are depending on him for our daily bread. We are depending on him for everything we need. We are depending on him. So regardless of the situation, regardless of what we're going through, regardless, when we make God central in our lives, we live a life in obedience. And that's the whole crux of it here. It's being in obedience to God. So when we make God central, when we make God our number one, we are coming into alignment and coming into his obedience. So even if we don't like a situation, or even if we don't like an individual, or even like if we don't, we don't want to do this, we don't want to go here, we don't want to say this, there are things we don't want to do, but God is asking us to do. There are things we don't want to say, but God is asking us to say, regardless of our feelings. If we make God number one, then we are going to do what God is asking us to do, regardless of how we feel. And at the end result, one thing I find is when we do what God wants us to do, we benefit from it. It is actually a good thing. When we do what God wants us to do, we actually are the benefactors of what it is God is asking us to do. We don't think anything of it because we don't want to do it. So we see something like it could be fear, it could be intimidation, it could be, like we don't think much of it at the time. But when God asks us to do something and we do it, then we see like the benefits of it. He's not just asking us to do something just because he's God. He's asking us to do something, A, for his glory, and also B, for our benefit. So we are actually benefiting. It is for his glory, and he's benefiting from it as a result of it. And so by placing God, like making God our God, the God, by making him God, then we are going to become obedient. When we are actually making him first, we are going to be obedient to his rules and his laws and his regulations. And he who is our source, he provides us resources in various ways, in various forms. God provides resources for us. And his way is always the right way. And that's something that I have learned as a follower of Jesus Christ, as someone who makes mistakes and doesn't always get it right, but pick myself back up. And as I continue this walk with God, I have learned time and time again that doing it God's way is the only way. Not only is it the right way, it is the only way. There is no plan B. There is no other way. The only way that it is going to be the right way is by doing it with God. So that's why the importance, because God made us for his glory, to worship him and for his glory. So he didn't make us to worship ourselves. He didn't make us to worship ourselves. He made us for his glory. I know that this is going to cut off soon. I hope that I get this whole self thing in this, because I'm going to have to speak on the other three, which won't be as lengthy. But yes, he made us for his glory, so the potter has every right to demand, to expect whatever he wants from the pottery that he creates, because he created us. We don't have that final say in how he's created us. So he has the final say in how he has created us. And he's doing this for our benefit. It's for our benefit. But if we make ourselves our own God, we're not going to benefit. And what ends up happening is people end up getting mad at God for their own choices, for their own ways, for their own things. And I'm not saying that bad situations haven't happened in people's lives. I'm not saying that, none of us have had perfect lives or, perfect situations. And I know that some people have had better situations, maybe growing up or whatever. But at some point, we have to take ownership of whatever it is that has happened to us in the past. At some point, you have to take ownership of it and say, okay, yes, I know that this has happened to me. How do I move forward in order to improve my life? And when you move forward by making God central in your life, and by dying to self and surrendering to him, is the first place and where you should go and where we should go in order to say, this is how I'm going to change the trajectory of my life. From here, from A to B, it wasn't great. But that doesn't mean from B to C, it has to remain the same. And so we get a chance to choose and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to surrender everything to God. Looking at the time. I'm going to surrender everything to God and allow him to be God of my life. And from this point on, I'm going to allow him to guide me and tell me which way I should go, how I should live, how I should do things. I'm going to allow God to do that for me. But if we don't do that, if we continue on the trajectory that we have been continuing on since we were born, then things are going to continue in that way. And then people end up blaming God for choices that they are making, and they are not including God in them. And God is not telling them to do it. God's not telling them to go here. God is not telling them to say that. God is not telling them to be with that person. But they make the decisions on their own, and when they don't work out the way they planned it to work out, the way they envisioned it to work out, the way they fantasized that it was supposed to work out, then it's God's fault for sure. And depending on the situation, if it's a place of work, if it's an individual, then it's the work's fault. Then it's the individual's fault, and it's God's fault. But none of it is their fault. No accountability, no responsibility, none in their decision making. And if it hadn't been for their decision making, all the fallout that happened would have not happened. It is because of the decision that they made, because they're God of their life. So because of the decision that they made, being God of their life, why there was the fallout, but it's the man's fault or the woman's fault or it's the company's fault. But no, it's not their fault because of the choice they made that they weren't supposed to make. And it's never, and it's God's fault. Even though God didn't tell them to do it, but God was somehow supposed to just give them their wish because he's a genie in a bottle and, just rub that bottle, let him pop out and, it's all about whatever I want. It's all about me. And that's what people make of God. It's all about me. Rub that bottle and poof, you come out. I want this, I want that, I want this. I don't want you. Don't want you to be God of my life. No. Don't want that. No, none of that. But I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, I want this. And when God says no, of course it's his fault. So yes, so it's important that we make God central in our lives and that we die to self. But yes, as I was talking about pride is a big one. It's all part of self. So the whole thing about pride, the whole thing about pride, and I'm talking about now, still the superego here, for any kind of people out there who are in psychology. But the whole thing about thinking you're it, and you're better, and you're this, and you're that, and you're God, and you're God in a sense, and you're all, and it's like God gave all of us everything we have. God, like all the talents we have, those who are athletic, gifted in certain, like different athletic abilities, those who are gifted in science, in creative arts, those who have voices to sing, to dance, those, like those who are, beautiful and, talented and everything. God, we didn't do it ourselves. It didn't come from us. So none of us are impressing God with the gifts and talents we have, no more than God was impressed by Satan, by how beautiful he made him. He was not impressing God by the beauty that he gave him and by the glow that he exhibited as a result of being in his presence. And when you're dealing with someone in that kind of super ego type thing, you're dealing with someone who thinks almost that they're impressing God, and that because of what it is they have, and God gave it to them. So when someone like that looks at God or says to God or, thinks that, this should be for me, that should be for me, this person is a no one, I should be there. It's like God's looking at you and saying, really? Like, I made you. I gave you what you have. And you're telling me how I should do things or how I should move because you think I should be impressed with all the credentials and all of the accolades that the world has given you? Nah. You're not fooling God, not manipulating God. He's known of your manipulations, of our manipulations, whoever, long before the world was created. That's the God we're dealing with. We're dealing with the God that who knew the end, who knows the end before the beginning even happened. He knew the end. He knows the end before creation even happened. So we're not pulling anything over God's eyes when we go to him and think that we are so grandiose and that we should have whatever because of who we say we are or who the world thinks we are. But when you look down on other people, when you think you are the best of the best, you miss out on a lot of things, because when you're at that height, you're unteachable. Because you know it all. You don't associate because they're not good enough. You don't do because you're too high and mighty to go down there and clean. When you think that you're all this and that, then you're not allowing God to work in you to guide you into things that He has for you, because you already know what you should and should not be doing because of how you think you are. And so with pride is basically, yeah, so it's like you think you're better than, and if you see that someone who you don't think is as good as you, having something that you feel you should have, then your pride gets in the way. And then from the pride, resentment, hatred, depending on the individual, attacks, a whole bunch of evil things come out of that. Because you're now looking at someone who you don't think is worthy to have what God has intended for them, because you think you're better than them. So that's kind of like not the positive, but kind of like the inflated side of ego, or it's the super ego. So then we also have pride, which is in the id, the low self-esteem, thinking you're not good enough. This is pride too. A lot of work. Thinking you're not good enough, thinking you're not smart enough, thinking you're not worthy, thinking, and this is a God too. You're not making God your God when you think like this. You have made yourself God by thinking that you're not good enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not smart enough. You're not capable enough. You're telling God that He didn't put anything in you worthwhile. You're telling God that you're worthless. So this part, thinking you're not good enough, is a form. It is pride, in a demeaning sense. But you're also making yourself God, because you're basically saying that you have nothing to work with. And also with you thinking that you are less than best. Like, that's not humility, first of all. It's not humility. But by you thinking that less is best, this also goes into a form of manipulation. So this too also takes us into a form of manipulation. This is where all the masking and the pretending that, like someone who may come from a poor background may not want people to know that they come from a poor background. So they will lie about their predicate. They will lie about what they have. They will lie about their education. They will lie about their relationships. They will pretend that they are somebody that they are not. A lot of pretense, a lot of pretending. All because of your low self-esteem. So a lot of, just like with thinking you're too much, thinking you're not enough, a lot of things can come as a result from that as well. Resentment, anger, bitterness, jealousy when you see other people having things. And I'm not saying that that is always the case. Not always the case. I'm not saying that all of those feelings are always the case. But I'm just saying with that, there comes, depending on the individual, the whole masking, the whole pretending, the whole charade of being someone you're not, to hiding who you really are, not living your authentic self because you are unhappy with who you are, not recognizing that God has, that God, everyone that God has made is a somebody. Everyone God has made is special. Everyone. It doesn't matter how much. It's not about money. And this is the problem here. People make everything about money. People make everything about being sexually, not everybody, but I do think that money is probably one of the main. I'm going to be talking about that one, the money, but also if not that, then the whole thing about money, or it could be power, also attraction to like the opposite sex, and if these things are not in line, then there's something wrong. People make things, and it's about who you are as an individual. It's not about money. It's not about power. It's not about the opposite sex and how they feel about you, or how they feel about you towards, or, regarding someone else or what. It's not about that. But many people place their identity in these things. Many people place, and if they don't have what they feel they should have in these things, then they feel that they're less. And that is not the case. And this is why it is so important to make God your central, because it is about God. If you make God your focus, if you make God your first, as he said, have no other God but me, by making God your first, dying to all your selfish wants and selfish needs, and many of those things aren't right for you because you don't know. We don't know what's right for us. God knows what's right for us. And in many cases, what is right for us is completely contrary to what we think is right for us. And it's so much better than what we think is right for us, because God knows what is right for us. He created us, so he knows what he created in us. And many of us don't even know who we are because of the environment we were placed in, the life that we were living in, we grew up in. We don't even know who we are, who we really are, who God really created us to be, because of all of the trauma that has surrounded our lives. But when you make God central, when you